As time moves forward, as technology changes and grows, as the infrastructure of companies continue to ebb and flow, one thing remains the same. A leader has to produce. This is the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast, a transformational leadership approach that's centered around three core concepts: vulnerability, transparency, and authenticity. On this show, you'll learn how to be open and honest with yourself and with others, while also developing trust, empathy, and respect within your team. You'll learn how to empower them to take ownership of their roles and responsibilities. This is the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast. And now your host, Edward E. Mosley Jr.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast. And today we have a great episode I think you're going to find. We got a gentleman by the name of Scott Anderson, and I won't talk more about him just yet. I will bring him on, let him introduce himself, and we will go from there just like we always do. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Edward. Great to be here.
To have you here. I'm excited. Just what I know about you, what I was able to find out about you. But tell us more about Scott. You know, what is Scott? What does he do? What's his business? And lastly, I want you to tell us, what is leadership to you? What does that mean?
Yeah, such an important question. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've run I launched 10 companies and sold 8, and have the scars to prove it, as I like to say. I'm also a licensed mental health therapist. And one of the reasons I was so anxious to talk to you is your experience from a military standpoint. And I started a non-for-profit myself called At Ease USA. That is a research accelerator and treatment developing entity that provides state-of-the-art treatment to military families that are recovering from post-traumatic stress disorder. But like you, I'm a serial entrepreneur and I'm a leadership coach myself. And the thing I'm really focused on right now is the epidemic of workplace burnout. And I'm publishing a book the end of the month called You're Not Toast. That's about some practical steps that all of us can take to both prevent and to recover from burnout. To your question about leadership, that's so important. And I think today more important than it's ever been. And what I always come back to with leadership is followership. For people to make a decision of their own free will to follow us. It's one thing if you have a rank or a job title or you own the company or whatever. But I've discovered in my own leadership life that none of it matters unless people are willing to follow you, are enthusiastic about actually following you, and have made a conscious decision to do that. And that takes some very special conditions. And in fact, I think you're already talking about them in the Mosley Method. But ultimately, we have to be able to trust our leaders first and foremost, and we have to be inspired by them. But leadership is a choice, or rather, followership is a choice, and we can't. We can only earn that. There's no way to have people follow us in a sincere way if we haven't earned it.
Scott, you said a whole lot there. I was trying to write notes down, but I think the one thing that stuck out to me the most was, and not a lot of people use this as followership. That is so crucial. We can move managers to leadership position, leaders to leadership position, but if no one is willing to trust you, believe in you, you don't inspire them or all the above, they won't follow you.
That's right.
They won't follow you.
That's right. And I think most people, especially today, are cynical, at least suspicious of leaders, and come with a show me, prove it to me. Why should I follow you? More so than than ever before in at least American history. So the challenge of being an effective leader and earning that essential followership is more important than ever, but I also think more challenging and more difficult than ever.
I think you're right, because I can remember. So I'm retired Marine, did 22 years, and I can remember um, that whole concept of, once we trained, if our CO or our commander said, "Hey, go there," we didn't second guess it. We went, because we knew we had trained this up. We had
Yes.
taken the time to map it out. We had strategized it. We had game played it so many times to where it was just second nature, and
Right.
we didn't have that mentality to not to follow the directions.
Yes,
And but
exactly.
but but we got there based on the repetitiveness of the training, and just the um learning the leaders, learning his character, learning how he functioned, and how he thought. And once we saw that, to your point, once we saw that, and then we started to see those positive results consistently, then it's just a matter of just, hey, we started thinking like him, and he didn't even have to ask us half the time.
That's right.
Tell us half the time to do, you know?
Consistency is so
Yeah.
important. I'm glad you said that because, at the end of the day, people can follow people they don't necessarily agree with in every respect. But if they see that their leadership is consistent, that they always do what they say they're going to do, even if you object to it, even if you
Yeah.
disagree with it, even if your opinion is different or you have a different philosophy, uh, consistency covers a lot of sins
Yeah.
from a leadership standpoint. And what folks I think are looking for, especially outside of the military, is show me the flaw, show me where you're a hypocrite, basically,
Yeah.
show me where you're not walking the walk. And so consistency by itself is so important. But to be consistent, leaders need to know, what am I consistent with? What are my values, or my mission, my vision? What
Yeah.
do I really care about, so I can be consistent to something instead of it all being made up on the spot?
Yeah. But I think the biggest problem with that is, and I see this all the time across organizations, um, the employees, let's just say the employees, the workforce, they don't know the overall mission, objective,
Right.
goals. And let's even take it out even further. They don't even know their direct supervisors' philosophy, or goal, and how it all fits into the big picture. And I just think that's one of the biggest flaws.
Yeah.
So there's Chick-fil-A's everywhere, right? And Chick-fil-A's, when you go in the store, no matter where you go, the employees they're just upbeat, they're energetic, they're dressed, dressed nice. Everybody's a guest. How may I help you? But that's that philosophy across the entire organization. And
Exactly.
and and they understand the importance of their job, and providing an experience, because I think it's an experience that they're providing. And I think
Absolutely.
when you compare that to, an airline, for instance, if your luggage, you may have had the perfect flight. The stewardess joked on the intercom. It was a seamless flight. But if you get to baggage claim, and your luggage is late,
Yeah.
you're mad.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that one small piece will mess up the entire organization, the entire department, the entire company's reputation. But to your point, it goes back to followership and what
Really,
they
yeah.
consistently put in place.
It does. And, one of the reasons why we see so much burnout in the workforce today, the Gallup company says that over 40% of the American workforce reports that they're either always or
Yeah,
mostly burned out. I mean, it's a
yeah,
staggering number. But so much of it has to do with the fact well, two things really. One of them is that they're looking towards leadership for consistency that they can trust and respect, not
hmm
necessarily agree with,
yeah,
but that they understand what it is, and they see that it's administered as consistently as human beings can do, which is not 100%, but is, if you're mostly follow your own word, then you can get a lot of forgiveness. Anyway, that's one piece of it, of the burnout issue, is just that vacuum with respect to leadership. The other part of it is that we sometimes, and it's hard to say this about super high achiever people, but so often we're holding ourselves to a standard that is unachievable.
Yeah.
And also, one of the main clinical symptoms of burnout is a tendency to feel like a victim. Whenever I say this to people I'm working with, especially high achievers, they say, "Oh, hell no, that's not me. I'm the opposite of a victim. I show up and take responsibility for everything that happens." But what happens over time in the workforce, especially if our trust is betrayed in small ways, like not getting the luggage, or in big ways, like being lied to, over time, what a lot of us do is begin to feel like a victim, that that I can't count on these people, and therefore, I'm sort of victimized. And this is one of the areas where people slide into this. It happens so slowly and subtly. It's not a conscious decision. But it's one of those areas that people can get a lot of relief right now, is to remember that if we're waiting for everyone else to shape up, it could be a long, long wait. What we can do is lead ourselves, and we can do it right now, right this moment. It's the feeling of being disempowered, I think, that is one of the root causes of burnout. Whereas if we remember, I get to decide how I'm going to be. I get to decide what my values are, and how I can hopefully inspire people to follow me. Then the ball game changes. But if we're waiting for other people to be perfect, even perfect leaders, or mostly consistent, it could be a very long wait.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm actually excited to actually meet and talk to you, because I'm actually I'm on a doctoral journey, right?
Good for you.
And yeah, thank you. And it's on strategic leadership. And one of the I think my project, or my paper or dissertation or whatever, I'm leaning toward toxic work environments,
Yes.
and how transformational leadership plays a big part in that. And one of the main themes I see is burnout. And
Yeah.
in this, in some of the, in a lot of the aspects, burnout is really attributed to a toxic leader and the environment and the culture.
Yeah.
And to your point, the small side could be um, missing luggage or something, but the big side of that is, did my supervisor just lie to me? Or
Exactly.
I'm doing all this work and I'm not seeing any growth.
Yeah.
I'm stuck in this position, and I can't get out of this stuckness.
Yeah.
I like to always kind of call it self-sabotaging. And then of course this, where we get into that imposter syndrome, to where we don't feel as though we even rate. And so burnout
Exactly.
burnout is hard. you know
It is hard,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And what we notice with our clients is that one of the canaries in the coal mine, if you will, about burnout, is this feeling of being exhausted and thinking, I'm going to get a good night's sleep and tomorrow I'll wake up fresh and energized again, or I'll take a long weekend or a vacation and I'll come back energized. And one of the number one symptoms clinically of workplace burnout is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't go away. This happened to me personally, where I found that I was waking up in the morning exhausted, and like all sort of, I don't know, driven people, I figured I just rub dirt on it, and because I had to go to work,
Right.
there's no other option. But I finally got to a place, like so many of our clients do, where they begin to worry, wow, what if one day I cannot answer the bell? What
Yeah.
if I really cannot get out of bed? And to your point about imposter syndrome, what if people can see that I'm here physically, but I'm really just mailing it in, that I'm not all there because I kind of know in my heart that I'm showing up physically, but I'm not bringing my A game. And how long will it take before someone notices that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that kind of lonely desperation that really burnout is all about. It's so interesting what you said about toxic workplaces. I've worked with thousands of companies, including mainly Fortune 1000 companies, and we talk a lot about toxic workplaces and that are systematically dishonest, basically. And my experience is that there are certainly cultures that are more difficult to work in than others, but that the genuinely toxic work environment that is misogynistic or racist or sexist or is systematically kind of corrupted in terms of being dishonest is a relatively rare thing. What happens more often is that, and this is kind of a controversial thing, but more often I find that super high performance people cause their own burnout by really taking on complete responsibility for everything. And their solution, and it was certainly mine, is the idea that if I just work harder and care more, that no matter what the problem is, I'll be able to solve it. The problem is one day you wake up exhausted and you can't get your energy back. That's that sort of horrible Groundhog's Day movie moment where the alarm clock goes off at 6:30 one more time, and you think, I don't know if I can do it today. So we find that people do lead lives of quiet desperation, as Thoreau said, but that on the other hand, fortunately, there are some really good remedies that work very quickly and permanently if you know what they are.
So I like how you talk about the high performer, but isn't that and what I think I gather from that is because they're so high achieving, they feel as though they can do everything, take on every task,
Yes.
um, and and they probably could at not all together,
Yeah,
but they think they can manage their time well enough to do everything, and
exactly.
ultimately they're coming out not doing anything 100%.
That's right. I mean, the problem is that, when we're younger people, we compensate for our lack of experience, especially high performance people that are ambitious and have high standards. We compensate for lack of experience by working harder than anyone else, and also by not saying no, by just saying yes to whatever responsibility comes our way. And pretty soon, we earn a reputation as being people that are the can do, get it done people who really give a damn.
Go-to,
about
the
it.
gurus, yeah, yeah,
Exactly. And we get rewarded for that.
yeah.
And the problem with that is that doesn't scale. You can't we can't overcome every single obstacle by working harder than everybody else, pulling all-nighters, things like that, or just worrying or caring more about it than anybody else. It can work for a long time, but sooner or later, and I find with a lot of people, it happens in their 40s, and especially after if they have partners in their life, or especially if they have children, they begin to realize, boy, this isn't going to work. I had a client say to me recently, it feels like the game is succeed at work or succeed at home, pick one. And because I'm not going to be able to do it both places. And my partner is already making noises about, we don't like it when you come and you're not present, when you're with us physically, but you're kind of a zombie. The problem is that at a certain point in everybody's career, all the things that got us to a certain place don't work anymore. And it doesn't mean we have to fail or stop succeeding, but it does mean that we have to start working in a new way.
Mhm.
There's a great book by one of the foremost coaches, I think, named Goldsmith, and he wrote a book called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and that's the point that I think high performance people typically hit. The kind of work ethic and everything else that worked when you were 25 or 30 isn't going to get you to where you want to go when you're 40. It doesn't mean you have to fail or give up on your goals, but it does mean that we're going to have to look at things very differently.
So with all that being said, two things popped into my mind. The first thing is, how do they say no but still feel good?
Yeah. Well, and this is it's so funny that I live in Omaha, Nebraska, where the home of Warren Buffett, and everybody in Omaha can quote Warren Buffett, no matter who you are. But one of the quotes I like the best is that he said the difference between rich people and very rich people is that very rich people say no better than rich people. In other words, it's not in a lot of cultures. It's not very popular, and in fact, you can knock people, backwards by saying no sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, unless you are in a toxic workplace where saying no is not acceptable, um, I mean, what most successful people do is to say, look, these are the priorities. If you want me to change the priorities, I can do that, but I can't. You
Yeah.
have to decide how you want this to be. But it's having the vision and the honesty, really, to say, to say no when a problem is not yours to solve, or where the expectation is unrealistic. Um, and it takes practice. In fact, we have a training. I'd love to send this to people. Maybe I'll put it in your show notes. But we have a training that's exactly that, is to how to be assertive in the workplace without being an ass, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's 20 ways to say no, basically. And it's something we never do in our culture, especially if you're a high achiever. So it takes some practice. But there are lots of ways to very respectfully and in a very respectable way say no. That's really about defending the goals, your goals and the company's goals.
Yeah. One of the things that I think I have started doing within the last 10 years, and it has really helped me, is um, really managing the access that people have to me.
Yes.
Not physically also, but I mean physically, mentally, and emotionally as well. And
Yes.
and some people can't understand that, but I've gotten to the point to where there's certain stressors I don't want in my life.
Yeah.
I call it my OODA loop. I don't want it in my OODA loop. Um, I don't want
Right.
it in my arm's reach, because there's certain energies that are just bad.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I have learned one of the things I do is I've learned to manage my expectations, but I've also learned to manage others' expectations.
Yes.
Meaning, let's just give example. If I need, let's say it's March now, and I really need something by August. I need the final product by August, but I reverse engineer. So I figure how much time do I need to have it. Let's
Yes.
say, so August, I really want all my input provided to me by June.
Hmm.
And I've learned not to tell them that the due date is August.
Right.
And so I give myself a couple extra months, but I also back up, keep reverse engineering it, and giving
Yes.
them less time as well, because it's training my mind to say, okay, you know what? If I need it in 8 months, I'm really going to tell them I need it in 4. They're going to give it to me at the third month anyway, because
That's right.
nobody's working at the same speed I'm working, and I had to understand that, and accept that if I'm in sixth gear, I cannot expect everybody to operate in sixth gear.
Yeah.
I
That's
can't.
so wise. But
Yeah.
it takes a little scar tissue research to figure
Yeah.
that out, right? I mean, when we were 20,
Yeah.
it seemed like, well, these stupid people aren't moving fast. Don't they care? Don't they see how important
Hmm.
this is?
Hmm.
But it's after bashing your head against that a
Yeah.
couple of times, you begin to realize, yeah, I've got to do what works here,
Yeah.
not necessarily what I think is right.
Yeah. And the other thing you mentioned, I think is very important, is work life balance.
Hmm.
And I've always lived this way of, when you see, if you and I are talking today on this podcast, if I were to see you in Nebraska and we're golfing with each other, I'm the same person. I don't live two different lives, right?
Yeah.
And I have came across times in my life where everything was just so regimented and so scheduled, to where I'm scheduling time with my wife or scheduling time with this. And I said, you know what? Okay, got it. But as as crafted as that may be, it works.
Sure.
It works.
Yeah, at some point, I mean, the idea, especially when we're younger, is that it's possible, and in fact, I really have to arrange my life so that I can have everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and not make any key decisions about one thing being more or less valuable than something else. But we realize as time goes by, we either learn it the easy way or the hard way, but we learn that we have to make choices and that we can't have it all. And this is back to values. If we don't have a personal GPS that tells us, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm saying no.
There
I'm
you go.
saying no because I don't want that energy in my life,
Yeah.
or because it's not mine to do, or because I have other priorities, whatever that is. And will everybody like that? They may not.
But but
Um,
but they'll learn to accept it
they will. They
because
really will.
because I have this.
Especially when your results, it's just like you
Yeah.
said, you've restricted access to yourself.
Yeah.
And I had a CEO that I worked for years ago who used to segment his day. I don't know how he did it. He might have been a Marine, maybe that's how he did it. But he broke his day down into 15-minute meetings, and he had, or maybe it was 10-minute meetings.
Wow.
Anyway, he was very busy. People really needed his time, and for 10 minutes at a time, he would give you everything he had.
Hmm.
But the assumption was that you came with an agenda, you came with a goal, you came
Yeah.
with your ask, you came with all of these things. And if you didn't have that, he didn't suffer fools, and the meeting would be over, and that would be that.
Yeah.
But people learned that this guy would give you his blood, sweat, and tears for 10 minutes, and that it could really rock your life. But you had to come prepared to
Yeah.
play big for those 10 minutes.
Yeah. And the other part of that is I have this joke that I tell people if they approach me and say, "Hey, want to get on your calendar or have some time, or you want to chat about this." And to his point, I always say I got to check my Palm Pilot, and 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 how I balance that is if I'm going to the gym, if I'm golfing, or if I'm spending time with family, whatever it is throughout the year, it's already in my on my calendar.
Yeah.
It's already on my calendar. And so if you were to say, hey Ed, I want to get 30 minutes on your calendar. When can we talk? You give me a date, and if I look at it, and if something is already there, I can't make that date, unfortunately.
Yeah,
And I keep it like that. I'm not
that's right.
double booking or I squeeze it in. Nah, you know,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah, and this is one of the things that people who are, and we deal with high performance burned out executives all day long. And part of what we tell them is, look, you've got to decide what's important to you. It can't all be important. We go through a values exercise, a personal and a work values exercise, so that they really have a rule to check themselves against. But they have to be able to protect their calendars, which is really their lives,
yeah,
ruthlessly.
yeah,
I tell these folks, like a mama bear, you've got
yeah,
to protect your calendar,
yeah,
because your calendar really is your life. And if you're not willing to be ruthless about it, then you're going to suffer, but it won't be anybody's fault but your own.
yeah,
It isn't anyone else's fault. If you're burned out at that point, it's because you're either not clear on your values or you're not willing to fight for them.
yeah. And the other thing I would like to add to that is I actually even factor in breaks and just me time,
Yes,
you know.
absolutely.
And again, to your point, if you're not ruthless in that, like you say, just this is my time. And if I have a meeting at 2, then I may block off, an hour before and an hour afterwards just to get prepared and then just to decompress, for a
Exactly.
30-minute or hour, but it's blocked on my calendar. And if something else comes in, so if something is on my calendar, right, and somebody books a client session or something like that, it's not available
Yeah.
because at that time it's not available, and I'm okay with that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And it kind of goes back to, what we were saying earlier about the the idea of followership versus leadership. But again, even if the people may be upset or offended or put out or whatever that they can't get on your calendar, but one of the things that they will respect over time is what you believe in. They will know what
Yeah.
you believe in, because part of what you're essentially saying to other people is, look, this is what I care about. And if
Yeah.
I spend time with you, it's because I care about you and I want to be all in and I want to give you everything I've got, but I'm not willing to half-ass it, and neither should you. Really.
Yeah. And to your to the example you gave earlier, how many times do we go to meetings and we're sitting there for 30 minutes and 40 minutes and 45 minutes, and we've never even went down the agenda, half the agenda, or even covered anything? So I understand his 10 minutes. That really makes you get in and get out. You
Yeah,
know, it
really.
does. It
And
does.
if the idea is just to roll around in it and have friendly chit chat or win points politically,
Yeah.
there's another way to do that. You're not going to get on my guy's calendar to do
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but there are, try to get him on the golf course or whatever. But
Right.
what he will not allow and is ruthless in preventing is his time being wasted, not just for himself, but for the people that he serves and leads.
Yeah. And that's the one thing we can't get back. We can't get time back. And
That's
that's
right.
that's what I'm super ruthless about. And that's why I really I really the way he has it set, I get it. Um
Yeah.
the other thing I want to talk to you about, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, was tell us about your PTSD program for veterans and what you're doing. Tell us more. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, back in 2007, a long time ago, I became aware there was a report by, this is back when President Bush was president. There was a report called the Report on Wounded Warriors, and it basically talked about the prevalence of post-traumatic stress disorder on the one hand, but the incredibly low number of people that were being treated for it.
Mm-hmm.
And in those, this was sort of at the height of the war in Iraq, and the numbers of military that were returning to the United States with PTSD, but who were not getting treatment for it, was astounding to me. And I did more research, and also I worked with some families of veterans and of active military, and I discovered that the families also can experience a form of PTSD called
Mm-hmm.
indirect well, typically it's called indirect or virtual PTSD. And so it's not just the combatant who's affected, but it's whole families.
Yeah.
And when you map it all out, there was something like 500,000 veterans that returned from Iraq with PTSD. But if you multiply that by 5 or 10 or 20, including their family members and people in their communities and so forth, it was just a huge number of people. So my main concern was how do veterans get the treatment that they need, but also because the family members are not eligible for VA care, how are the wives, the girlfriends, the boyfriends, the children, the grandparents, how are they going to get the help that they need? So that's one set of problems. The other one is that people who are, and you know more about this, Edward, than I do, but that the people who are the most grievously affected by PTSD are the ones that are the least likely to seek out treatment.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. I mean, the whole nature of the illness is an avoidance of the issue. And it's one of the coping mechanisms. And so we try to create or investigate some technology that would allow people to get treatment without having to go to a therapist's office or without having to go to a group counseling session.
Mm-hmm.
So we partnered with a scientist at Tel Aviv University who was himself, he was the former head of the Israeli Commandos, which is sort of the equivalent of kind of like the SEALs or the Green Berets or Delta Force. And he and his colleagues all had PTSD as a result of their service for the Israeli Defense Force. And so when they got out of the military, they wanted to devote their lives to researching it. Anyway, we were very fortunate to be able to partner with them and to develop some technology that has been proven by and recognized by the AMA, among other places, and the National Institute of Mental Health, to provide treatment for military active veterans and active combatants, as well as with their family members and community members, that makes it possible to get some help without having to rip off the Band-Aid and remember the horrible things that have happened, because that's really the hardest part about it.
Yeah. You know, that's a big topic. That is a very big topic, right?
It is, yeah.
And you almost have to separate it. And I'm sure you all have done this in two different groups, because you just talked about it. And one is the veteran, the military service member themselves. And the other side of that spectrum is their family members, right? And to your point, if it's a wounded post-traumatic stress, then the family has to deal with the house situation, transportation situation, and then life after that. And I don't have the numbers or the time, but I do know that there is a certain period of time after the veteran gets out of the military that those benefits stop.
Yes,
and
they do.
And depending on if it's an amputee or anything like that, I've even heard stories where a double amputee benefits stopped. So this person have gave all of their all they had, and that's unfortunate. But then it's that psychological piece that you mentioned that is it happens in the quiet time. When everything,
that's right.
When everything is moving fast and everybody is up and moving, it's okay. But when you have that quiet moment, or you're watching a movie on TV or something like, on TV or something like that, that's when it reoccurs,
That's right. I mean, one of the reasons why we have a phone support service and the most important hours are between midnight and 6 a.m.
Yep.
And in fact, a lot of the public service advertising that we do, most of it runs between 3 and 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about folks who cannot sleep and cannot escape it. And this is like you say, if you've paid the ultimate price, whether directly in combat or as a family member, to me, you deserve the American Gold Card, whatever that is. So that's that's what we've tried to contribute, along with other great American organizations and nonprofits, including the work that you all are doing. It really does take, there are a lot of people that need to be treated. It's one thing I've noticed, that regardless of your politics, I haven't found anybody that said, we've got to give veterans and their families everything there is to give them. I've never run into anybody, regardless of what political party you're in, that doesn't agree. Yeah, that's an absolute must. That's ground zero. We must do that. And one of the things I found that's actually been pretty inspiring to me is, in annual fundraising events that we've had and so forth, is that you get a lot of people from way across the political aisle from each other, who can show up and agree and get hand in hand about this thing. It's a tragedy that this is necessary, but it is, I don't know, to me, it's a little inspiring, I guess, that it is possible on this issue for us to come together.
Yeah, and the other thing that I wrote down as you were talking, when I became a federal employee, I was given a preference, to get a job. And one of the things that I went through, and we're back to this leadership, we're back to this toxic work environment, and this is going to just shock you, but this actually happened. I started this position with my supervisor had never been in the military, right? And I had a big thing of having I didn't want my back turned to certain pathways or avenues, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so we were in a cubicle setting, and let's say if the cubicle, there was 2 seats, and so we were in a kind of a, I guess that would be a U-shaped cubicle.
Right.
And behind this, there was a passageway, and at the passageway was a copier machine. But it was a copier machine that was a community copy machine. So everybody's coming back and forth, they're printing to it, you name it. And when I first got there, the way that the seat that I was given had my back to the copy machine.
Oh, yeah.
And all I wanted to do, Scott, was move from in the same U-shaped cubicle from my back being to the copy machine to move to the left to where my left side could see the copy machine.
Yes.
And I took that to my supervisor, and she questioned it. She says, well, why do you need to do that? And I gave her part of, the reason. And then she proceeded to say, well, who diagnosed that? Or how are they a specialist in that? And so now I'm scratching my head, like I'm really scratching my head, like, okay, this was diagnosed and confirmed upon my departure from the military.
Yeah.
Well, are they PTSD doctors?
Oh, yeah.
And it got even worse. I ended up having to submit for a reasonable accommodation, go through a reasonable accommodation board just to move my seat from this degree to this degree within the same cubicle. And so that is the type of leader, manager, that we have in this position these days. And so that's inside of some of, across all the spectrums,
Oh, it is. And that's, that specific thing of having your back to people, essentially activity, people in action that you can't see. There's a ton of research about that, which is why in a lot of veteran housing and in homeless housing that's being developed today, one of the most important things is that when a door opens to the room, the main couch or sitting place has to be looking at the door, but the door can't have visibility to the bedroom. Because it doesn't feel safe. And it's not it's not rocket science to make these things happen, but there is a ton of research that says if you design it one way, it'll work, and if you design it the wrong way, it won't. And so I hope we need to stay open to those things.
And I'm gonna give you another example of how this is even playing out in courtrooms. I volunteered as a kind of a mentor, veteran liaison for my county's court system, right? And the reason they had this program was to, as they would have veterans come in for whatever their cases were,
right?
Some of the judges wanted to kind of understand the veteran life, the military life, because some of the cases were, this may have been the first time they'd ever been in trouble. So they didn't want to, give them this super high, sentence for something that truly may have been a mistake, right?
Yes.
And part of the problem was, so the veteran would have a social worker, they would have a probation officer or whatever. And what was happening was the veterans were not showing up to court. And part of what they found out in this study was it was simply because the way the podiums were situated in the courtroom. Because as in most the courtrooms that we had here, you have the audience, and when you come up, your back is to whoever's in the audience.
Right.
And so what they noticed was if they were to, slant the podiums to where the back is to the wall and they can see the audience, it made a huge difference in those veterans in this program showing up to court.
Absolutely. And the veterans court programs, we have one where I live as well. the data is just overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you can intercept a veteran who has had a brush with the law as a result of a lot of, I mean, typically it's PTSD along with sometimes substance abuse or other
Right.
mental health
Right.
problems.
Yep.
But
Yep.
anyway, if you can intercept a person like that and get them into the a diversion program like Veterans Court, which is incredibly rigorous. It's not to succeed in that program, you got to work your ass off.
Yes, you do.
You've got to do everything exactly right. So it's not for people who don't really want it. On the other hand, if you do really want it, it's a lifesaver. And the data is just overwhelmingly positive. The return on investment is overwhelming as compared with just, you know, basically just sending people to prison. It's astonishing.
Yeah. The other thing I wanna just kind of talk about is with everything going on in the world, in our country right now, without a lot of the layoffs, the hiring freezes, um, the executive orders, um, we see a huge shift in the workforce. You know, they're being fired, brought back on, um, less staff to do a lot of work.
Right.
And those are the conversations that are being had within the offices. Like, what's the pecking order of who do we let go? And if the billets have been vacant, then that billet is going away. Position is going
Yeah,
away.
that's
If the
right.
person retires, that billet is going away. Um, if it's an overstaff or a temporary employee, that billet is going away, but the work is still going to be there. So how does this burnout, how does this overachiever, how do they get the relief? What's going to happen in this structure, just restructuring?
Well, it's a very good question that a lot of Americans are asking themselves very wisely.
Yeah,
Can this work? Is it
yeah,
possible for this to work? And in a lot of cases, it simply is not possible.
yeah.
My biggest concern at the moment, well, a number of concerns, but my for the folks that we work with that are in the workforce, the question is, how do you maintain your sanity in
Right,
an environment where you don't know from day to day, and it's entirely arbitrary. It doesn't have to do with performance. It doesn't have to do with and you could be fired and then hired back tomorrow, maybe.
right,
And if you are hired back tomorrow, you might be, but you don't know. Are you going to be hired back for a week, a month, a year? You don't know. It's more important than ever for folks to take care of themselves.
yeah,
And we mentioned we have a program called fastfixcall.com, and one of the things that we do as a service is we invite people to call our team of coaches and counselors and talk about workplace burnout and talk about the stress they're under. And they're quick calls. They're only 15-minute calls. It's entirely free. But what we do during those calls is to give people essentially first aid tools and techniques that they can use right this minute to mitigate this stress and overwhelm. Um, and this isn't going to make the macro picture that's going on in the government go away. No one can do that overnight. But what we can do is to begin to realize we can take back our sanity, our own sanity,
yeah.
and it's in this kind of situation. It makes total sense to feel like a victim,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very important for our sanity, and for our identity as human beings, and also to be able to lead other people, to be able to find our own personal true north, and to know that that we are going to be okay, because we know some techniques that'll relieve the stress in the short term, and that we also know what's true north for us. What
Yeah,
do we need to do as people to take care of ourselves, to protect ourselves, to say no, and maybe walk away from situations like this. Um, I always say to people, if you're in a genuinely toxic work environment that is prejudicial and dishonest and cruel, then get out of it. because life is not, it's just not worth it. Life is too short.
Yeah.
Um, and any sacrifice or any switch that you have to make will be worth it. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have the freedom, or don't feel at least they have the freedom to do that today. And that's the reason for this fast fix call, is to try to give people some clinically proven techniques so that they can lower their blood pressure, lower their cortisol, take a deep breath, and to think about what your options really are. But the number one job is is to get some relief and to reduce the stress and the overwhelm so that we can think clearly. So again, we invite people to go to fastfixcall.com. It's a free call where often will ask people to take a quick burnout assessment so that we can kind of gauge what's really going on with them. But based on that, we deliver some proven techniques, clinically proven techniques that will help you right now today.
That's great. I think you gave your bullet. I think you
I did.
I think you gave it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's perfect, because with everything going on, and again, I'm in the environment of, it started with return to work, and then it's, and how a lot of agencies would say it is, anybody within 50-mile radius, return to work now. Anybody within a 60 or 70-mile, you have a couple more weeks, return to work. But inside the work environment, there's so much other conversation going on, and I'm in the HR world, and so
Right.
I'm hearing, in one day, at the beginning of the day, let's put it this way. Overnight, you may receive a task to provide this data.
Yeah.
By the time you come in at 8 o'clock and you're working on that particular task request, by 9:30, it's shifted to another request. And then by the end of the day, it's a total different data points that's being requested.
Yes.
But then, to your point, you fire an employee. Oh, let's pause that. No, come on in.
Yeah.
And now you say, oh, the agency may have the choice to keep them.
Yes.
And so, with so much uncertainty, I facilitated a suicide awareness and suicide prevention class yesterday, actually. And that was kind of one of the conversation we talked about, was in this time of uncertainty. Now that we for 3.5 years, most people operate off of MS Teams or virtual.
Right.
And because of bandwidth, a lot of agencies, you didn't turn on your video, so you don't see. I didn't see you smiling, and so now we're back in the office. Everything is wide open now. You hear everybody's conversation, and we're able to hear and see the uncertainty and everything. So, what do you do?
Yes. And this is where, if you have the freedom to leave an environment that is genuinely toxic, then you should leave.
Yeah.
But because most of us don't have that freedom, or at least don't feel as though we have that freedom, we have to be able to discover a place of peace inside ourselves.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, the only peace there is inside ourselves. And that's really the point of this fast fix call, is to try to give people some ways to do that, because unfortunately we cannot control very much in the outside world, but we can control where we place our attention. We can control where we place our effort, and we can control where we place our hearts and minds. And we have to really protect that, not only to be productive people, but to be healthy, sane people.
Yeah. Scott, I really thank you for coming on the show. I think this is a very important conversation and topic, especially, now with everything going on. There was burnout way before this, but
Yes.
it just ties all in. And the one thing that I've been in some of my coaching sessions, one of the things I've been asking, especially my supervisors and leaders, is, when with the uncertainty, right? we became so comfortable with, hey, I can be here 20, 30, 40, whatever years. When was the last time you did any kind of personal or professional development for yourself?
Yeah.
The average, I guess what are we at, Gen Z or something?
Yes.
They in the longest that they're looking to stay in an organization, 3 to 5 years.
Oh yeah.
If that, right. If that.
Yeah.
So with that mentality, what they're saying is, I'm going to come in the organization, do what I have to do, get everything I need, and I'm going to look for the next opportunity in the next place. Yeah. We didn't do that. Working in the factory or working in an organization for 40 years is gone.
It is.
And are we in our mind, to your point, in our mind, in our mindset shifting, are we pivoting? Are we allowing ourselves to pivot and look at other opportunities that may come out of this?
That's right. Well, there is opportunity, and there are so many more options than people believe. I mean, I'm so glad to hear, sad in a way, but glad to hear that you were facilitating the discussion on suicide prevention. But there are a lot of people who really feel backed against a wall right now, and it's really important for all of us who can to keep talking about the fact that there are options, there are opportunities. But we need to begin by backing up a step from all the noise and taking some simple steps to center ourselves and to know that really we are okay. We're going to be okay. But we can't, if we continue to try to make the outside world change, to make the planet stop spinning, politics stop happening, we're not going to win that war. But we can win the war in our hearts and our minds. And that can happen now. Yeah.
Hey, well, let's just leave it right there, because I think, again, fastfixcall.com.
That's it. Fastfixcall.com.
Yeah. And I would definitely put that in the notes, because I think having places and the opportunity for people to contact without any kind of stigma.
Right.
I think that's great. So like I said, great having you on your show. I had a great conversation.
My pleasure, Edward. Same here.
Likewise. And as I always like to end my show, is just find peace. Just peace.
You've been listening to the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership podcast. Edward E. Mosley Jr. has 30 years of leadership experience and is an ICF credentialed leadership coach. And it's his passion to inspire leaders who can foster a safe space where they can empower their followers to take ownership of their roles and responsibilities while sparking collaboration and creativity. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But until then, find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edward E. Mosley Jr. To contact the show, send your emails to limitlessboundsteam@gmail.com. See you next time on the Mosley Method Mastering Leadership Podcast.